Coming up next is an exec from Nemaura Medical. It's ticker NMRD. It's Dr. Faz Chowdhury. He's CEO at Nemaura. Faz, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for asking. I will let you have at it, sir.
Super, thank you very much. I assume you can see the slides.
Slides look great.
Super, thank you. Okay, excellent. Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to speak at this conference today. I'm really excited to be speaking here today. And thank to all the listeners who are listening in today. And sorry, let me just... So first of all, just to start with some forward-looking statements that I should be making as part of today's presentation. And just briefly, one question I do get asked quite frequently is, well, what is your background? You know, where did you come from? What have you been doing? So essentially, just a very brief intro to my background. And so originally trained as a drug formulation scientist and completed a master's in nanotechnology and microsystems. And I have a doctorate in nanomedicine and drug delivery. And essentially, the point is here that I'm a technologist at heart. So, you know, that's my forte, that's what I do. And I've essentially been the CEO from its foundation. So by way of introduction, about Nemaura Medical, so we've developed what is essentially the world's first daily wear, non-invasive glucose monitor or glucose sensor. And this is a Class 2B medical device approved in Europe and currently pending FDA review of a PMA application that we submitted. We launched SugarBeet with our UK licensee in the UK and also a program in the US called Beat Diabetes. And ultimately, the idea is that on the one hand, you've got the sensor technology, and on the other hand, you've got Beat Diabetes, which is a program, a digital program, which is designed to manage, to support and hopefully prevent diabetes and potentially also reverse diabetes. And importantly, what I wanted to also talk about today is that today we've launched the beta program of what is a mass market consumer metabolic health application. And that's something I'll be talking to you about a bit later. And this is where we connect the mind and body, and our product is branded Miboko. So the focus of today's discussion, there are a vast number of slides which I'm going to skip through the majority of those, and I've put them in there so that if people wanted to, they could go out there and access those from our website later on and look through the overall progress and developments that we are making as a company. But today's focus is going to be predominantly on a couple of things that have been asked several times over the recent weeks. And first of all, well, where are we with general reimbursement strategy? You know, how are we going to get these devices into the hands of patients, and how are they going to be funded? So I'm going to tell you a lot more about that today. And secondly, of course, we've been saying that we are going to be launching the metabolic health program before the end of this calendar year. And of course, we're very pleased to be able to do so 3 months in advance of the end of the year. And I'm going to be telling you a lot more about that program today. Just by way of background, very briefly, obesity and diabetes, these are two of the major drivers of chronic disease, of the chronic disease epidemic. And essentially, you've got about 500 million people around the world with diabetes itself. And then you've got, I mean, the figures vary, but somewhere in the region of 1.5 billion people around the world with prediabetes, and the vast majority are not actually aware of the fact that they're prediabetic. So our aim as a company, our focus, the core focus, is to either prevent, manage, or reverse type 2 diabetes. That's our forte, that's our mission, that's what we intend to do. And the idea is to use our suite of technologies to improve metabolic health across the broader population, meaning that let's try and avoid or prevent diabetes in the first place, rather than trying to manage it where possible. And the way we intend to do that is basically combining our the knowledge that you will gain from use of the sensors. And by the way, that doesn't just mean that you stick a sensor on and hey, you get a profile and then you try to interpret that. We go way beyond that when we talk about the knowledge that you gain. And that knowledge is basically about how we also help to interpret that data and provide metrics by which people can judge or assess how well they're performing or how much improvement they're making over time, rather than just leaving a sensor in the hands of individuals and saying, well, off you go, get on with it. And engagement. So ultimately, it's very easy to put devices in the hands of people, but if you cannot engage them by giving them something that empowers them, and also by translating data into something that is meaningful, something they can relate to, then people will quite easily lose interest. And this is where the engagement part comes in. And of course, the ultimate outcome that we're aiming to achieve through all of this is to reduce HbA1c in the case of those with diabetes, reduce blood cholesterol levels in the long term, same as blood pressure, and achieve sustainable weight loss. And that's what we intend to do, or what we're targeting to do, through a combination of our sensor technologies and our digital programs through the apps. So if I go on to the product portfolio, so we have the SugarBeat CGM. So it's a standalone continuous glucose monitor where you stick a device, a transmitter on your arm with a daily disposable sensor. That's one of our products. The other is a Beat Diabetes program where we have an app which supports people to help them lose weight and to be able to ultimately manage their diabetes. And that is in combination with our sensor, where we gather data and give meaningful feedback to individuals to say, well, over the course of the month, you did such and such, and look, this is where you are on the scale in terms of your levels of fluctuations, in terms of the way you're responding to sugar, or even in terms of the way your lifestyle is affecting your sugar levels, for example. And then finally, the third one is the Consumer Metabolic Health Program, which is Miboco, which is a program that we're launching today. And going back to SugarBeat, as a standalone continuous glucose monitor, you have a daily sensor, you apply it to the transmitter lasts for up to 2 years, so you don't throw away the electronics. It's environmentally friendly, it's highly cost effective in that you recharge the unit, you stick the sensor on, and it's the sensor, the daily disposable sensor, which is about 1 millimeter thick, which you simply dispose of. It's a self-adhesive sensor which sticks on the one side to the transmitter and on the other side to the skin, and you throw that away on a daily basis. And of course, over the course of the day, you get the profiles of your sugar levels, and you can use it as a standalone sensor in order to be able to monitor your glucose levels. But the idea is that the reason why you would actually measure on a continuous basis and try to get a profile of your sugar level, as opposed to just a point-in-time measurement of finger pricks, is that with a finger prick measurement, you really cannot assess or judge the extent of fluctuations you are getting. And also, by getting the profiles, the important thing here is that you could be measuring your HbA1c, but then there are in fact good HbA1cs and bad HbA1cs, in the sense that you could have the same HbA1c but vastly different fluctuations in your sugar levels. And of course, it's those fluctuations and the extent of those fluctuations that essentially impact the long-term prognosis in terms of the potential complications that arise. And this is why knowing the fluctuations is such a powerful tool. But what we're saying is that, well, actually, the type 1, those with type 1 diabetes, that market is very well catered for with the long-term sensors, 10 days sensors, 14 days sensors, etc. What we're saying is that, well, you've got 90% of the market where people have type 2 diabetes. And most of that is basically lifestyle dependent. So actually, you've got a scenario here where you don't necessarily need a sensor every single day of your life. What you could do is you could use it as a tool with which to gauge the extent to which you're managing to improve the control over your sugar fluctuations, as opposed to becoming dependent on a technology by sticking a sensor on every single day of your life and thinking, well, the sensor will tell me when it's too high or too low and I can act accordingly, as opposed to actually making lifestyle changes, dietary changes, etc., that will lead to better control, and using the sensor as a tool that will enable you to assess the progress you've made, rather than a device that you become dependent on. And this is where, by being a daily wear sensor, it means that people have the ability to be able to use that sensor as and when they choose. So whether they choose to use it 2 or 3 days a week or 2 or 3 days a month, it's entirely at their discretion. Excuse me. And of course, as a direct result of that, you can understand that therefore this becomes highly affordable. So, you're talking about maybe tens of dollars a month, as opposed to hundreds of dollars a month for sensors. And from our UK licensee, we've had various testimonials. And as a direct result of that, we've announced in the past that our UK licensee ordered 200,000 sensors with a rolling forecast of another 100,000 per month. So a couple of million over the next 2 years. And they're selling these on the basis of a diabetes management program, which is designed to provide support to the users in addition to the sensors to measure how much progress they're making in terms of the control over sugar levels. With regards to launching Sugarbeet in the rest of the world, we will be revealing plans over the coming quarter regarding how we intend to now also roll out to other territories where the CE mark is accepted. So, for example, Europe, and then there's parts of the Middle East, and there are parts of Asia, for example. But initially, we will be focusing on Europe. And as we've said before, we expect to be having some activity in that area before the end of the calendar year, and we shall be providing further updates next quarter regarding that. Now, going on to reimbursement strategy. So just 2 days ago, we announced a deal with, in fact, our UK licensee on a combination product, whereby they will be essentially providing the CGM so our Sugarbeet device in combination with certain drugs that are widely prescribed to those with type 2 diabetes. And of course, if you think about it, the future of medicine is where you are combining things that can allow you to measure the progress that you are making, or the impact that a medication is having on you in terms of the improvements that you are making. And of course, this is by far, from our perspective, probably the smartest way to get these devices into people's hands, because then you're not talking about a hard sell. You're not talking about trying to figure out how you're going to get this reimbursed and all the rest of it, because ultimately, the sensors will be provided to those individuals who are already on those drugs that are designed to help them achieve better glucose control. And so therefore, with those sensors, at the end of the month, they'll be able to see, well, to what extent have I now achieved better control? And in anticipation of this deal, and bear in mind, there are about over 2 million people in the main European territories, 4 of them, and UK combined, over 2 million people that are prescribed some of these medications. And so in anticipation of that deal, we'd already back in July ordered electronic components for 200,000 of our transmitter devices. And the anticipated launch is at the end of Q3 next year, when some of these drugs start coming off patent. And of course, even if we were to just sell those 200,000 devices, we would need over 800,000 sensors per month just to service those 200,000, just to give you an idea of the types of volumes we're talking about over the coming months and years. And also to add that this is in addition to the current orders that we have for the sensors, which are going to go direct to consumer out-of-pocket expense. So therefore, from our perspective, with all the partners and licensees that we've been speaking with over the last couple of years, we certainly feel that this is by far the most efficient way for us to get the product to market on a large scale. The Beat Diabetes program that we launched in the US last year, all I will say about that is that next quarter, we intend to provide a detailed update of the progress that we're making with regards to that program. And just to reiterate what that program is about, it's basically a digital program designed to help people manage their diabetes, lose weight, and achieve better control over their blood glucose levels. And it's combined with our sensor in the form of ProBeat, which is basically where we gather the data and then provide feedback in a way that's actually meaningful for individuals that they can act upon, where they get an overall idea of how well they are performing or they're not performing, as the case may be. And so now moving directly onto the metabolic health program. So this is something that we've been working on for the last 18 months. And the idea arose from the fact that there are companies out there in the digital space whereby they are making enormous progress, where they have just apps which help people basically improve their lifestyle, their diets, etc. And of course, the way we view it is that if you can measure metabolic health or have a metric by which you can measure what is actually happening inside a person's body, as opposed to just what's superficial, then potentially you have something a lot more powerful. And this is where we've launched our product called Miboko. And this is where what we're trying to do is connect the mind and the body. And essentially, we're trying to say this is the way, this is the future of basically health and well-being. And also, it's an intelligent way of doing things, because now not only are you going to be embarking upon a program, but you are going to have metrics by which, as in meaningful metrics by which we can measure how much progress or how much improvement you are making, or to what extent you have a stable, if you like, metabolic health. And of course, our sensor will be used to do that. And of course, in the territories where the CE mark is already approved, we're able to provide real-time monitoring and real-time insights into what is happening. And those territories where we're yet to get approval of the device, we will have other ways of measuring the metabolic health metric. And if you take the US alone, you have almost 90 million people with prediabetes. Now, each and every one of those individuals is a potential customer for Miboko. And the idea is that we will provide a series of tools within the app that enable a person to incrementally make improvements in their lifestyle, in the diet, in their habits, which will allow them to hopefully avoid long-term diseases such as diabetes. And initially, as part of the beta, we're actually giving away the sensors for free. So the entire program is free on the beta program. And then eventually, of course, we will launch the commercial subscription model in due course. And bear in mind, this is not just direct to consumer. This is something that will be marketed to employers and insurers all over the world. So that's really all I had to say with regards to the sugar beet sensor and then Miboko, our metabolic health program. And to summarize, I would say that, so apart from the fulfilling the orders for the orders that we received for the sensors earlier in the year, the other things to look out for are the launches outside of the UK territories. And also we'll provide some updates as to how the FDA review is going with the PMA. And then with regards to the metabolic health program and the sugar beet sales, I guess the two key things to look out for now are, from our perspective, in terms of the growth of the business from this point onwards, is about, well, how many registrations and subscriptions are we now achieving for Miboko moving forward, both on a direct-to-consumer and on a corporate level or insurer level. And of course, secondly, generating revenues for sugar beet sensor on a standalone basis. And just finally, we still have a very healthy balance sheet, so we are in a fortunate position in that regard. And it is probably the most exciting time or period for the company since its very foundation. So thank you again for listening, and I shall revert to any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Faz. That was great. We do have a couple quick questions here, kind of focus on the sugar beet device specifically. So a question from Christine in the audience. She said, how does the sensor test the levels without needles?
That's a really good question. So we have obviously I would say there are, and I was asked this precise question just like 2 days ago on the call. And I mentioned that, look, there are 5 or 6 factors that make up how we actually get the glucose to the surface of the skin, how we measure it, and how we interpret it. And of course, there's a lot of know-how involved in that. But what I can say is that we take glucose to the surface of the skin in a non-invasive manner. And that glucose, it basically is what we directly measure. So we do not measure glucose by inference. We are measuring glucose directly. And of course, based on the 1,400 or so patient day studies that we've done, the methodologies that we have adopted have demonstrated that it doesn't lead to skin irritation or things of that nature, at least thus far on the patient pool that we've tested.
Gotcha. And how long does a charge last for the device, and how long does it take to charge? Is this like a serious time investment when you have to charge it?
So usually when I'm not diabetic, but I still wear the device just to try it out every now and again. And I usually give it a 20-minute charge and it lasts the whole day.
Oh, cool. Okay, gotcha.
It's pretty quick. Yeah.
Gotcha. And then Christine had another really good question here. I know you hinted at with the one of your other services with one of your other candidates, but I don't know if you mentioned for SugarBeat. Is there any prospect for when insurance companies will start accepting SugarBeat as something that they might contribute to or pay for patients?
I mean, we are working on this, and when you consider the price point, it really shouldn't be a hard sell, because we
Sure.
are talking about something that is going to be highly cost effective, and in the long run, when you consider the benefits people will derive from this in terms of being able to actually see what's going on, it would become a very powerful tool. So we are working on it. That's all I can say at the moment.
Awesome. Well, that is great, Faz. Dr. Faz Chowdhury, he is CEO and chair at Nemaura Medical. It's ticker NMRD. Thanks so much for joining us, Faz.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.